Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Monetize Your Message. Maria's not here today, so it's just me welcoming our guest, Sarah Kornblet, who I am super excited to be talking to today. She's one of my favorite human beings. If this is your first time tuning in, Monetize Your Message is a show that Marie and I host that is all about how to take your core values and the core principles of your business and monetize them, make money off of them while still staying true to who you are. And I think Sarah is a perfect example of that. She is a lawyer for small business owners and entrepreneurs, just like all of you. And she has gone through this amazing branding process. I remember watching when you were doing your rebrand and everything to become Destination Legal, which is like a brand I can totally get behind. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you for joining us today. And we're really excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm super excited. Any time I get to chat with one of you ladies just makes my day.
I love that I keep saying we as if Maria's here. Like,
She's here in spirit. She's here in spirit.
She is here in spirit, yes. And for those of you who are watching, you might notice I don't even have my little name beneath my face. It's because I had to use Marie's account. So if I put that under, you would all be confused. But so let's dive right in and talk about, actually, you know what? Before we dive right in, I think there's a congratulations in order, isn't there?
Well, I guess so. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So do you want to tell everyone about what just happened in your life?
I am happy to. I'm recently engaged. I guess I'm now betrothed. I was like, when do I say betrothed? And it happened just about a week and a half ago when we were finishing up our vacation in Paris, and it's under the Eiffel Tower. And now I'm just like, can't stop thinking about wedding planning. So it's exciting.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't dream of getting proposed to under the Eiffel Tower in Paris? like you can't write stuff that good.
I know. It was pretty amazing. And, in our communities, we always talk about manifesting and how we make things happen. And so something funny that I actually drew a picture of him proposing, like a stick figure picture on a Post-it note a couple months ago of him in front of the Eiffel Tower.
That's amazing.
It's just like, if you're into manifesting, these things work.
I love that. Yeah. And so Paris ties perfectly into Destination Legal. So what is Destination Legal and how did you get to the point where you became Destination Legal?
Sure. I mean, I will try to do the short version so that we're not here all day. But as Jesse said, I am an attorney and I work primarily with coaches and other online business owners. And my company now is called Destination Legal. Not only is it the destination for online business, and protecting your passion is kind of my tagline. Through, I do contracts and terms through templates, and I do trademarks as well. But it's also destination because I work with people all over the world, which I love. And I'm a huge traveler. And so one of the main reasons, like I'm sure a lot of you guys, is that I started my online business so that I would have the freedom to travel whenever I want. I was over in Paris and in Europe for almost a month. And so I was doing work over there as well as taking some time off. And so that was sort of the goal with my business. To rewind a bit, I started out at a law firm and was just miserable, and worked in Washington, D.C. for a couple of years. And I knew pretty quickly that the 9 to 5, it wasn't for me. I wanted to travel. I wanted freedom. And so I left there. I went back and got a master's and worked in international legal space for a bit, doing global health and working on some international treaties. And I did get to travel quite a bit, but travel for work, it's great to go over and be in Malaysia, but not if you only get to see your hotel, or to be in Jordan or Kenya. And, I got to go to some pretty great places, but traveling for work is different than traveling on your own or with your own choice. So about 5 years ago now, I left the 9 to 5, and I found a few people that were doing this online business thing. Like, it just wasn't a big thing back then. And so once I found that people were doing it, I was like, wow, people do this? Like people work from their computers? And so ever since then, I have been doing some legal stuff for online entrepreneurs. I also dabbled in other areas of online business. I was doing some e-commerce for a while. And then, almost 2 years ago, I really dove into the legal side, and there's just a huge need for it in the online space, not only education, but also just reasonably priced legal products and services. A lot of older lawyers, I don't mean to be ageist, but a lot of older lawyers they're not familiar with the online space. They don't know what needs to be in website terms. They don't know what it means to be coached or to put out an online course. And so I have a lot of people that try to use those attorneys, and then they end up coming to me. And so when I was thinking about rebranding, that was a big part of it. Like, what do I want it to say? And I know, you guys deal with this all the time. Like, what do you want it to say? But also, what is going to attract people to you? And how is it going to sort of be honest? I started my first legal business. It was called the Bootstrap Lawyer. And it was very masculine. And I had like this blue and gray logo. And it just didn't feel fun. It didn't feel like me. So when I started Destination Legal and came up with Protect Your Passion, it was just really important to me to build something that felt like a lot of fun. So that's sort of the initial story.
And it's so true. I mean, I'm just thinking back right now to our own experience, Marie and I growing our business. And I remember this conversation that we had. I don't even know if Marie remembers this, but it was within the initial stages of building our business of, going down and getting our DBA and everything and like being like, yes, we're a legal business now. And we had this conversation where we said something along the lines of, we should probably talk to a lawyer at some point. And then we were like, we'll do it later. We'll figure that out when we're big enough for it to matter. And I feel like there are a lot of people who are in that boat where the idea of tackling what is legal and what is not, and of making sure that your business is legal can feel very intimidating. And like you said, there are a lot of lawyers out there that maybe run those more traditional brick and mortar shops where they feel a little bit inaccessible and scary to approach because you're afraid you're going to just get this giant legal book like slapped down and you're like, oh God, what do I have to do?
Right. Absolutely. And that's part of why I exist and love what I do, because it's like my mission and passion to sort of make it not scary. And I want to be approachable. I want people to be able to ask me the questions. And I know what that's like. It's the same way as, if I'm looking for some sort of service or I'm going to go with someone I can relate to. As we all know, we work with people that we know, like, and trust. And so, of course, when you're thinking about legal, that trust factor is very important. You're not going to, if I'm like sitting here and seem to not know anything about the law, like that will be a question mark. And so that's why part of what I do is just educate. Not everyone knows what they need or knows when they need it. And so if I can sort of give that general guidance, it's very helpful. Even if they don't ever end up buying anything from me, it's still really important for me to get that education out there. And, in the past couple of years, online attorneys are really popping up. So there are more options and more choices, and it's great to see that in the space. But there's still such a need for it because, I get people contact me on a weekly, daily basis because of something that happens that they didn't have their legal contracts in place or the right terms, or they ended up in some sort of a mess. And so I just don't like to see that, because a lot of the time it is easily preventable, and it's easy to sort of navigate around that with just a little bit of information as you're starting and building your business.
Yeah. And, now that you're mentioning it, I think really you were the first person that I saw in this space that was tackling the law in a way that was really, really felt accessible. And prior to that point, I really, like, if someone had said, oh no, you need to go get a lawyer for your business, I would have known where to start. I would have been like, all right, let me type in some searches into Google and see who's around, right? Because I wouldn't know where to go. And then when you entered the space, I think we both kind of entered the same spaces around the same time. So it's been kind of interesting watching our businesses grow alongside one another. It was like that constant reminder of like, oh yeah, you need to get this stuff taken care of. And we've used some of your resources to do that, to get some of the things on our website that we need to have on there. Because, you know, you mentioned it being scary, but scary as it is to dive into it and get all of that legal stuff in order, it's way scarier if you don't and something goes wrong.
Right. You know, it's like, I think one of my posts or one of the things I've said before, like, would you rather spend $200 now on a privacy policy, or would you rather spend $15,000 later when you get fined for not having one? You know, it's also, it's the offensive move in your business. So a lot of times it's much better to be playing offense than defense. You don't want to have to think back, okay, now my client didn't pay me, so now what? Well, the offensive move is to have the contract in place beforehand. You know, the offensive move is to make sure your website's protected before it goes live. And so, you know, spending a couple $100 now can save you thousands or even hundreds of thousands, because if you end up in some sort of lawsuit, that's what can bankrupt not only your business, but you personally as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is definitely scary. So what would you say are some of the most overlooked things that people should kind of line up legally in their business right from the get-go?
Yeah, so I think there's like two main things. So one is if you are a service provider, which I know a lot of our audience is, or if you're selling a product, the most important thing to have in place is a contract before you take that first paying client. Like, that's the bottom line. If you're accepting money in your business, even as a new business owner, you want to have a contract in place. If you don't, you're just risking not only that sale, that income, you're opening yourself up to huge liability and to being sued. So that would be like the number one thing. And if you're a product-based business, then you want your terms of purchase. Again, that's a contract and it protects you from liability. And so that's sort of like my one, like if you have limited funds, which I know a lot of startup entrepreneurs do, like that's where to put it if you're thinking about legal. Like, don't even necessarily worry yet about your LLC or trademark or anything like that is down the road. The contracts, and then if you have a website and you're sending out a newsletter, then your website policies are like right there under number 2, because some of those are legally required and also protect you from liability. So contracts and website policies are like, that's where to start.
Right. And I don't know the legal jargon that goes along with it, but I know that for some reason California screws everything up. It means you have to have more things.
Yeah. So in the US, you know, California, we're a federal system, but there are state laws, and certain legal things, certain website things are ruled by state law. And California has a very strict privacy policy requirement for any websites that show up in California. And because all of our websites show up in California, we have to all have privacy policies too, even if our business isn't there, because we're dealing, if you sign up for my mailing list, you're in California, then I owe you specific policy rights. And so, you know, California will fine these other businesses outside of their state if they don't comply. Like Delta Airlines ended up with a $37 million fine because they didn't have a privacy policy. And in California, like every time someone clicks on your website and it's not there, it's $2,500. And so they're just like racking it up. So
that's nuts. Yeah. So get a privacy policy on your website, guys. Do it now if you haven't done it yet. Yeah. Which actually brings me to the next question, which is something that I know I've heard of a lot of people doing, and Marie and I definitely did it a little bit at the beginning until we got formal contracts into place. And we're like, okay, we're going to do this right now. I know there are 1,000,001 templates that you can just like type into Google, like, I need a contract for copywriting services. What would you say to someone who is trying to go that route because they want to, you know, save a few bucks?
Yeah, so I think there's two things there. So if you're going to buy a template, that's fine. They range anywhere from $50 to a couple $100. You know, there's LegalZoom, etc., and that's an option. The better option is lawyer drafted templates from someone in your industry. So I have templates that are geared towards coaches, towards health coaches, towards web designers, because I know the industry. If you just go to, LegalZoom or wherever, and you're like, I'm a life coach that does Reiki. Well, they're not going to know what to do with that. So templates are a great way to go at the beginning. If you're talking about like going to Google and taking pieces from templates that are just randomly out there, that's not a good idea, because you don't know who wrote them. And so you don't even necessarily know that an attorney wrote that. You don't know if it's pertains to your industry. You don't know if it has the right things in there that are actually going to protect you. And it's also potentially copyright infringement, depending where you're taking it from. You can't just go around the internet and take things from other people. And so it can almost be more risky to try to cut and paste your own terms or contract together than to just pay $100 or $200 for an actual template, because you could end up risking yourself and your business and open yourself up to liability by using that in the end could end up costing you thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's so true. And we're using your templates with our work right now. And I can tell you, when we were going through and kind of filling in the blanks on that template, there were so many little pieces in it that I was like, I would have never known that this needed to be in here. And if I had grabbed the template off of Google, I wouldn't have known I was missing this thing that is actually really important.
Actually, yeah, that's absolutely the nail on the head. Is like, you don't know what you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I paid a lot of money to know this stuff and went to school for a long time. And so, it's the same in your business too, in your expertise. Like, you can see if I handed you something I'd written, you would be able to see what I'm missing, whereas I wouldn't. And so it's the same with legal.
Absolutely. And I love that you touched on this whole idea of copyright infringement too, because I think that's just a huge concern in the online space, whether you're writing blog posts or whether you're a photographer, or Marie and I both have run blogs at separate periods of time. I ran a travel blog for a while. She ran a blog for her RVing lifestyle. And so that obviously you have a lot of content you're putting out there, and even this show episode is content that we're putting out there, and there's always a risk that somebody's going to come along and be like, oh, that's nice, I'm just gonna use this on my thing and not attribute it. So how can people kind of is there even a way to prevent that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I know you guys in the writing space and messaging space run into this a lot because you're dealing with copy all the time. And so the answer is there's not necessarily a way to prevent it. So it's the wild west of the World Wide Web. If you're putting content, if you're putting writing out there, there's a chance that it's going to get taken. However, there are things you can do to further protect yourself. So in the US, copyright protection is automatic, meaning if you write something, it's yours, you own it. Someone can't take it and sell it and steal it or pass it off on their own. However, also in the US, if you haven't registered that copyright with the government, you actually can't bring a suit or a claim of copyright infringement. So what you can do is you can send a cease and desist letter. You can, depending on the situation and the platform, you can send a notice and takedown, which often the host platform will take down material if it's said to be infringed upon. But the real protection comes in if you register your copyright, because if you do and then someone takes it, you are automatically entitled to monetary damages anywhere from $750,000 to $150,000, depending on the situation. And so copyright registration, it's not difficult. You don't need a lawyer for it. You can do it yourself. And it's about $50. But you can like batch stuff. So if you're putting out a bunch of blog posts, you can do 20 at one time, or you can do your entire ebook or your whole online course. And that just sort of gives you that extra layer of protection and allows you to then bring a lawsuit. And so often photographers will do this with their images. And so what happens then is if they find someone took their image and posted on their blog, then they can come and say, you owe me $5,000 or I'm going to take you to court. And often those will settle without court, but that is just an extra way to protect yourself. However, unfortunately, prevention is quite difficult.
Yeah, I'm sitting here making a mental list of all the things I need to go and like make sure I have that extra layer of defense in place.
Yeah.
And I had that happen to me actually about 4 or 5 months ago. I published an article on a third-party website, and it was immediately copied and submitted to the same third-party website. And luckily they were, I was like, how stupid can you be? And luckily this website was on top of it, and they emailed me and they're like, hey, so are you the original author of this, and can you prove it? And as soon as I did, they took the other one down. But
wow, good for them. Well, yeah. I know, and I'm always astonished at some people. Like, we heard from one of our mastermind sisters, like, someone sent them their own emails. Like, we're not. Yeah.
Oh, I think your sound cut out for just a second. But no, it's amazing what some people will do in order to get themselves ahead a little bit. But that's exactly why we need people like you in this space, and why it's so amazing that there are people like you who are willing to bridge that gap between the scary legalese of it all and this sort of entrepreneur who is really trying to navigate the space in the best way that they know how, and don't want to go through these stiff legal documents to try and figure out what they need.
Right, exactly. And, it is exactly that, trying to navigate the scary legalese. And, what I find that's great, though, is once a business owner just checks this off their list, they just feel so much better and can get back to doing what they really do best at. And so it's like, I can check that off my list. I know I'm protected. It's a huge sense of relief. But it's also just like, we're all business owners here. We're all CEOs of our own companies, and like really actually stepping into that role is an important factor as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's that action of being a leader and stepping into the leadership role and doing what you have to do, which includes getting your legal in order and making sure that you're protected in that way. Just a quick reminder to anyone watching live, if you have any questions for Sarah, you can pop them into the comments and I will go ahead and share them with her. And if you are watching the replay and you have any questions, you can also post those into the comments. So I know a lot of people are watching this on replay because this is the middle of my day, at least in California, troublesome California. But so let's tie back into your message a little bit. So you made that conscious decision to shift away from that more corporate sounding language, shift away from that more masculine identity for your business, and shift more into what Destination Legal is now. Did you find that shift difficult at all, or did it kind of feel almost like you were coming home into something that felt more like you?
Yeah, it definitely felt like coming into something that was more like me. As I'm sure any business owner goes, naming your website or your business is such a thing. I think it took me months, because not only do you need to come up with something that you love, that makes sense, but that the domain is available. So of course, like, there were lots of things that I looked for that wasn't available, and I wanted to make sure that was part of it. But I really had to think about, what is the message I want my audience to think or to know about me. Like, I wanted it to be clear that I was doing something legal, but I didn't want it to be stiff or, there are lots of law firms named out there. I wasn't going to do anything that was too, like that, just because that's not me and that's not my business. My business is, I'm a different kind of lawyer. Like, I'm someone that you can relate to and talk to. So I feel like maybe with my business more than others, it is a fine line, because I still want to come off as professional and I'm providing a service, but in a fun way. And so I wanted to tie in travel. I wanted to tie in parts of me, because I knew that would help in getting my message out there. If I really stood behind my brand and stood behind that, it would be easier to spread the word. And so definitely when I was thinking about the branding process and naming, those things came up. And, I love the idea, one of my goals is to just speak at workshops and speak around the world. And I love the idea of being like, do you want to invite Destination Legal to speak at your retreat in Bali? Okay, yeah, like sign me up. And so I kind of thought about how that might look down the road as well.
That's amazing. Yes, I do want to speak in Bali. Oops, I think now I'm echoing. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Okay, am I still echoing? I am.
No,
all right.
you
can hear me? Okay, I'll just ignore my echoing voice then. And if anyone's watching live, if anyone's hear me echoing, just let me know in the comments. So, I love the because it's true for our business too. I mean, business too. Clients all over the world, right? Our destination is our clients from Australia and Iceland and all over. So it fits in so many different ways.
Yeah, I love that part about it too. Just being really flexible, like not only the destination for legal, but also just talking. My Instagram is full of travel, and I wanted to be able to keep sharing those sides of me in my business.
Absolutely, yeah, and that goes so much into being right. It's all about being right. It's all about being not having to get rid of those things that you really want to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. You guys know this and help people through this. It's a process. It took me years to get to this point. For a while, I was just under Sarah Kornblet. So it's okay to not get it the very first time, and when we go back and look at, Marie Forleo and people that have been around for a while, you see their messaging and their names and websites changing as well. And so, I would just say to other people, don't get discouraged if you aren't totally in love with your brand right now. You can still work on it.
Absolutely. It's an evolution that I think we all go through. And when you need legal help with that evolution, Sarah is there to support you along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, excuse me. So for those of you who are looking for legal support, whether it's to get that privacy policy up or to put a contract in place finally, where can they get a hold of you, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm over at destinationlegal.com. That's my website, and I offer templates and I do trademarks, as well as a couple other things. So you can always email me or private message me on Facebook. And again, with trying to bring in parts of me, I have a Facebook group called Cocktails and Contracts, because I'm enjoy a glass of wine and cocktails. So that was another way for me to try to create a space that's fun and not intimidating. Talking about contracts doesn't always have to be so bland. So people can find me over there as well.
Love it. And it's a great Facebook group. If you guys aren't in it, you should definitely join it. And then you can get some of those legal questions answered, and she can direct you towards resources that would help very easily. And if you ever get the opportunity to work with Sarah, I highly recommend it. She's an amazing person. She's an amazing lawyer, and she knows her stuff.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, Sarah. We will drop those links into the description of this Facebook Live so that people who are watching on the replay can go ahead and find your website, find your Facebook group, all of that. And thank you again for joining us. It was so much fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you guys.